You know, if it's the bitch or me, then I'll pick me.
Right.
You know, right, exactly. And so, and it is very crucial to get this progression correct, because monster's better than wimp.
Right.
Right. But the question is, what's better than monster? And so it's very interesting that you made those comments on the fighting side, because you wouldn't necessarily think that it would be true in that world as well.
Well, one of the best examples is your countryman, George St. Pierre. One of the greatest of all time. One of the nicest guys I've ever met. And if you didn't know that he was one of the greatest fighters of all time, you would never guess it. You would never guess it talking to him. He's curious. He's interesting. He's intelligent. He's very well read. He's always interested in different things. He's constantly searching for new information. And as a martial artist, he is still on a quest of improvement, even though he's retired from competing. Always trains. He's constantly training.
A quest for new information. Okay, so can I tell you a story about that?
Please.
All right, so this is the story that comes up at the beginning of Moses when he turns into a leader. So it's about how you turn into a leader. Okay, so he's already killed a man and he's left Egypt because of it. So now he's in this land called Midian, and he goes there and he chases some ruffians away from a well for these two girls who are drawing water. And they go and tell their father, and he says to them, bring this young man home to have dinner. So he does, and then he gets married to them. And then he becomes a shepherd. And this is crucial, because the shepherd's an image that runs through the biblical corpus, right? Well, shepherds at that time lived by themselves in the wilderness, on their wits, and they kept the wolves and the lions at bay with primitive weapons. So these were tough guys. And they cared for the most vulnerable. So a shepherd is an image of optimized ordinary masculinity. You can take care of yourself, you can keep the monsters at bay, and you attend to the most vulnerable. So Moses has got that. He's a shepherd. He's a successful shepherd. So now he's out there one day wandering around Mount Sinai. And Mount Sinai, or Mount Horeb, that's the place where heaven and earth touch. So that's where the messengers of the divine descend to earth. And so he's out there, and something attracts his attention, makes him curious. That's the burning bush. It's not a forest fire. It's not something you can't ignore. It's something alive, because that's a bush. A tree is a symbol of life. And it's burning because things that are alive burn, right? That's metabolism. And an intensification of that, like a psychedelic intensification of that, that's what the burning bush is. And that's what glimmers to Moses. And he steps off the beaten track, right, to investigate what drives his curiosity. And so then he goes off the beaten track and he starts to delve deeply into the mysteries of the burning bush. And at some point he realizes he's on sacred ground. He takes off his shoes. That's a symbol of willingness to transform identity, because shoes signify identity, right? They're part of your costume, your working man's costume. And so then he continues to commune with the burning bush. He gets deeper and deeper into something. He makes himself a specialist by following what compels him and delving deeply into it. And when he gets deep enough into it, to the bottom, the voice of eternity speaks to him and says, you're now no longer who you were. You're now a leader. You have to go back to your people. You have to stand up against the tyrant. You have to tell the slaves that they need to leave their tyranny and their slavery and serve me in the wilderness. And you have to do that now. And Moses says, I can't, because I can't speak. I'm slow of tongue. And God says, basically, that's your problem. And with me on your side, we can sort that out. And don't you have a brother, Aaron? And can't he speak? It's like, bring him along for the ride. And so that's when Moses becomes a leader, right? And so that's the pattern. It's like ordinary masculinity. Those are the dwarves that Snow White serves before she meets the prince, by the way, the ordinary masculine, right? So, and those dwarves protect her from the evil queen that wants to suppress her by feeding her a poisoned apple. So Snow White has to learn to serve the ordinary man before she can find a prince. Yeah, something Disney missed completely in the last story. So what's the pattern? Well, you discipline yourself so you become a shepherd, and then you follow what compels you off the path. Then you take it seriously and get to the bottom of it, and then that transforms you. and thus transformed, you can face the tyrant. You can specify the promised land properly, and you can lead the slaves across chaos and blood, that's the Red Sea, and then through the desert. Right? And so you said, you said two things. You said that the good fighters have learned to integrate their civilized side, otherwise they don't get to be great, and that they continue the pathway of self-improvement, right? They continue to pursue what's calling to them. That's another definition of God in the Old Testament, by the way. What calls to you? That's the burning bush. The spirit of the burning bush is what entices you, what grabs your interest, what attracts your curiosity. And that's identical. The biblical claim is that's the same thing as the spirit of adventure. It's the same thing that speaks to Noah. Noah's a good man. And a voice comes to him and says, all hell's about to break loose. And he believes his intuition because he's a good man and can rely on himself. So he makes the ark, right? And he brings his family aboard and culture and nature and reestablishes humanity. That's the pathway of the leader too.
What is your take on, there's a university in Jerusalem that had this theory that the burning bush was the acacia bush. And the acacia bush is rich in DMT.
Well, I think, look, I think that hallucinogens strip memory from perception. So you see the world in all its blazing glory. Huxley figured that out with the doors of perception. That is apparently what psychedelics do psychopharmacologically. They mimic a high stress condition, and they strip memory from perception so that you can return to the source and revitalize your perceptions. Right. So the probability that there's some overlap between that and the burning bush is high.